In the early 1700s, something buried cities across continents. History calls it progress, the ground beneath us calls it a reset. I first encountered the anomaly in a municipal archive in Stockholm, hunched over a leather-bound registry that smelled of centuries of mold. The document, dated 1702, described the reconstruction of the city center after what it calmly termed the Great Upheaval. That phrase alone felt wrong. Fires and wars were common in pre-industrial cities. What stopped me was a single line in the surveyor's notes: foundation walls discovered at a depth of 4 Ls. Construction unknown, predating the catastrophe. 4 Ls meant roughly 14 feet below what was then ground level. The surveyor had not found rubble, he had found buildings, intact buildings buried beneath the streets they were supposedly rebuilding. That sentence stayed with me. I spent the next 3 years following that thread. What I discovered wasn't a single local disaster, but evidence of something far larger, a global reset so severe it fractured the historical record itself. The official narrative presents the late 17th and early 18th centuries as smooth transition, the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, colonial expansion, steady progress. But when you examine physical evidence, architecture, infrastructure, geological layers, a different story emerges. Civilization didn't advance through this period, it recovered. This is an investigation into what happened around the year 1700. An event so catastrophic, it appears to have been edited out of memory and replaced with a narrative of continuity the physical evidence simply cannot support. I'm not claiming certainty, what I can show is a pattern. A global pattern of destruction, burial, and coordinated reconstruction that appears across continents, preserved only in fragments that survived the rewriting of history. Standing in Gamla stan, Stockholm's old town, you're walking on streets records claim were laid in the early 1700s after the Great Northern War. Buildings around you, merchant houses, civic structures, carry plaques dated 1710, 1715, 1720. This is the official timeline. But dig down, literally, and another city emerges. In 1998, during subway expansion near Slussen, construction crews broke into a chamber system that should not exist. I examined the engineering reports. The chambers were found at a depth of 18 feet below current street level. They were constructed of cut granite blocks, weighing between 8 and 12 tons, fitted together with tolerances measured in millimeters. These weren't crude cellars. The chambers formed part of a hydraulic system, pressure equalization features, overflow channels, and what engineers described as flow regulation mechanisms of unknown design. The project was halted for 6 weeks. The paperwork passed through 3 municipal departments. The chambers were documented, photographed, and then filled with concrete. The official explanation called them unstable medieval cavities. But the photographs tell another story. The stonework displays machine-level precision. Engineers noted rotary cutting marks and dimensional accuracy that suggested either modern surveying equipment or mathematical sophistication incompatible with medieval Scandinavian construction. More troubling is what the original 1702 surveyor, Gustaf Palmgren, described: not just foundation walls, but complete street-level structures buried beneath 14 feet of deposited material. Doorways, window openings with intact iron grates, paved floors, all underground. His measurements show these structures aligned on a grid pattern that doesn't match today's streets. Palmgren was documenting a city beneath the city. Reconstruction records from 1702 to 1720 describe Stockholm being rebuilt after catastrophe and subsequent inundation. Not fire. Not siege. Inundation. Flooding and deposition. They describe removing foreign material and raising new foundations above the burial line. By 1715, renovation orders required all new construction to begin no less than 4 meters above the previous ground level. When I compared modern elevations with 1689 maps, the difference was consistent across the old town, 4 to 5 meters higher than before. This isn't settling, it's rapid catastrophic deposition, followed by coordinated rebuilding that literally raised the city above its own grave. The 1689 map in the National Archives shows a different Stockholm: streets that no longer exist, harbor layouts that don't match today, district names that vanish after 1702. When I asked why, officials said the records were lost during reorganization between 1701 and 1703, the exact window of the catastrophe. Then there's the speed. Officially, Stockholm was rebuilt in less than 20 years. A city of about 50,000 people accomplishing engineering work that calculations suggest would require triple the labor force for triple the time. Records document over 200,000 tons of cut granite used. Quarrying, transporting, placing. The city's economy couldn't support that unless they weren't starting from zero, unless they were excavating and reusing buried infrastructure. Stockholm alone would be curious. It becomes disturbing when the same pattern appears elsewhere. In 2019, I traveled to Edinburgh. The city is famous for underground vaults beneath the South Bridge sealed in the late 1700s. Officially, they were storage rooms abandoned due to dampness. When I examined them, I found something different. These are not crude cellars. They are precisely constructed chambers with vaulted ceilings displaying the same mathematical ratios as Stockholm's buried hydraulics. The main chambers are about 4.2 meters high with vault spans of 6.8 meters, almost exactly the golden ratio within 2%. 18 rooms maintain the same proportions. The construction technique matches Stockholm, massive cut stone blocks, 8 to 15 tons each, fitted without mortar to millimeter precision. Tool marks show rotary cutting. More revealing are the features that make no sense for storage. Adjustable ventilation louvers, drainage channels cut into bedrock with calculated gradients, and what engineers describe as acoustic optimization. The chambers manage sound propagation deliberately. They were sealed in 1788. Closure surveys describe removing large amounts of sediment, foreign material, before filling them, the same phrase used in Stockholm. Geological analysis from the Royal Society archives shows the sediment was recently catastrophically deposited, and unlike local geology, Edinburgh's Royal Mile today sits about 4 meters higher than street levels shown on 1690 maps. The same elevation change. The same burial. The same timeline between 1696 and 1715. Stockholm and Edinburgh separated by 1,700 kilometers, yet rebuilt the same way at the same time. Then I went further. In Quebec City, archives from 1703 describe re-establishing the lower town after La Grande Catastrophe. Surveyor Michel de Laverne recorded stone structures buried under 3.8 meters of foreign sediment. His sketches show vaulted chambers with heights of 4.3 meters and spans of 7 meters, again matching golden ratio geometry. He notes the stonework exceeded colonial capability and suggested tools unknown to craftsmen. 3 locations. 3 continents, no coordination, identical burial depths, identical proportions, identical timelines between 1696 and 1720. The language matches too. Stockholm speaks of deposition, Edinburgh of inundation, Quebec of catastrophic sediment. Different bureaucracies, same phenomenon. The pattern repeats globally. St. Petersburg, officially founded in 1703, has reports describing excavation of sophisticated drainage infrastructure beneath recent alluvial deposits averaging 4 meters deep. Peter the Great's engineers weren't founding a city, they were clearing one. In Lima, reconstruction after the 1687 earthquake raised the city nearly 4 meters above buried construction. Vienna, Naples, and Istanbul show the same: buried structures, raised streets. Reconstruction between 1690 and 1720. Independent projects across continents encountering the same problem and choosing the same solution. What caused 4 meters of foreign sediment to appear almost simultaneously across the world? The burial itself is only half the story. What happened later is even stranger. Between 1870 and 1920, cities began systematically sealing what they discovered underground. In 1872, Stockholm ordered closure of subterranean anomalies during sewer upgrades. Between 1872 and 1889, over 200 chamber systems were filled with concrete, not random. Mapped against old grids, they targeted buried infrastructure deliberately. Edinburgh did the same. Between 1875 and 1895, vault consolidation projects sealed passages and removed anomalous features. In 1884, workers beneath the Royal Mile discovered a mechanical device of brass and iron, photographed as Artifact 7721 RM, then disposed of for public safety. The photo shows precision machined cylinders, threaded brass, calibrated valves, gear mechanisms. In 1884, that was cutting-edge industrial technology, yet it came from a chamber sealed in 1788. It was destroyed, the vault was filled, the record forgotten. Quebec followed the same pattern. Between 1880 and 1905, excavations removed stonework and dumped hundreds of tons into the St. Lawrence River, not preserved, disposed. St. Petersburg filled over 400 chamber systems between 1882 and 1910. Vienna did the same during district heating modernization. Everywhere, document, photograph, fill, erase. The language in these records is revealing. The structures are called anomalous, inconsistent, irregular, not ancient, not medieval. Authorities knew they didn't fit the timeline. Engineers in the late 1800s repeatedly wrote that the construction suggested modern fabrication methods. What they found was better than what they were building. Stockholm's 1878 reports describe hydraulic systems using pressure equalization and flow regulation principles not formally understood until the mid-1800s. Self-regulating overflow mechanisms, bypass channels, passive control systems. Engineer Eric Lundberg wrote that the buried infrastructure was superior to municipal systems replacing it. Edinburgh's surveys noted the sealed chambers maintained better air quality than buildings above, passive ventilation through geometry alone. Quebec engineers wrote that drainage gradients exceeded modern standards, optimized by mathematics rather than pipes. These weren't primitive ruins, they were sophisticated systems Victorian engineers couldn't replicate easily. The mechanical components deepen the mystery. Brass cylinders with uniform threading. Precision requires lathes and machine tools that became widespread only in the 1800s. Yet these parts were sealed in chambers decades earlier. The same anomaly appears in Naples, Stockholm, Quebec. Calibrated mechanisms, uniform threads, dimensional accuracy within fractions of a millimeter. And the metals themselves resisted corrosion unusually well. Reports note optimized alloy compositions beyond contemporary practice. Why would superior systems be abandoned and destroyed rather than reused? The only engineering logic is regression. Something forced societies to rebuild with diminished knowledge after losing the civilization that created the original systems.